Barack Obama broke down after what the Royal Guard said. "I've never heard anything like it." He had walked the corridors of power in Washington, sat in rooms where history was made, and met leaders from nearly every country. Yet, as his motorcade rolled slowly through the streets of London that crisp morning, he felt a unique sense of anticipation. Today was different. Today, he was heading to Buckingham Palace, a place steeped in centuries of history, tradition, and ceremony. Though he had visited many iconic locations during his presidency, the grandeur and mystique of the British monarchy carried a certain weight. It wasn't just a palace, it was a symbol of an institution that had endured for generations, a living connection to the past. The streets were lined with people waving small flags. Some held cameras, trying to capture the fleeting moment of a former U.S. president passing by. Others just smiled, thrilled to witness a figure they had only seen on television in person. Obama acknowledged the crowd with his characteristic calm smile and a small wave. There was a certain rhythm to these visits, a mixture of formality and warmth, and he had grown accustomed to it over the years. But something about this particular day made him more reflective than usual. Perhaps it was the weight of history pressing against the present, or perhaps it was the quiet curiosity he felt about what he was about to experience inside the palace walls. As the car approached the grand gates of Buckingham Palace, Obama could see the royal guards standing perfectly at attention, their red coats bright against the backdrop of the stone walls and manicured gardens. Their black bearskin hats made them look almost larger than life, like statues come to life, yet there was a quiet human dignity in the way they stood, immovable yet composed. It was a sight that had been captured countless times in photographs and television broadcasts, yet seeing it in person made the moment feel almost surreal. These were men and women whose duty was to remain vigilant, unflinching, and unwavering, yet their presence carried a sense of honor and pride that transcended mere performance. Stepping out of the car, Obama adjusted his suit and straightened his tie. Despite the cold air, there was a warmth in the atmosphere, a mixture of excitement and respect that seemed to hover over the palace grounds. The gates swung open with a quiet but deliberate motion, and the former president walked along the red carpet that had been laid out for him. His steps were measured, deliberate, not out of formality alone, but because he felt the weight of every footfall echoing through history. Buckingham Palace had seen centuries of change, countless faces passing through its halls, and today he would add his own footsteps to that long history. As he approached the entrance, the palace staff greeted him with polite bows and smiles. The staff moved with precision, performing their roles with a blend of efficiency and grace. Every detail had been considered, from the placement of carpets to the gentle nods of acknowledgement. Obama, ever observant, noticed it all. He appreciated these small gestures, understanding that behind every carefully orchestrated event were countless hours of planning, preparation, and dedication. He acknowledged each person with a nod or a smile, silently appreciating their efforts to make his visit seamless and dignified. Inside, the palace was even more magnificent. The walls were adorned with portraits of kings and queens who had ruled centuries ago. Each painting seemed to tell a story, capturing not just the likeness of the subject, but the essence of their reign, their personality, and their impact on history. The ceilings were high, decorated with intricate designs and gilded edges that gleamed in the soft lighting. Chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls, scattering light across polished floors that reflected the grandeur above. Every corner seemed to whisper tales of history, triumph, and tradition, and Obama walked slowly, absorbing the beauty and gravity of the surroundings. Despite his familiarity with important historical sites, there was something intimate about walking through Buckingham Palace. It wasn't just the physical grandeur. It was the sense of continuity, the feeling that every stone and every brushstroke had been part of a story much larger than himself. Obama, who had spent years shaping history and making decisions that affected millions, found himself humbled in this space. It was a reminder that history was bigger than any one individual, yet every individual had the power to leave a mark. He took a deep breath, feeling both awe and a quiet introspection as he moved deeper into the palace. As he made his way through the palace, he noticed the royal guards positioned at strategic points. Their expressions were stoic, eyes forward, hands firmly gripping their rifles. They didn't move, not even when others passed by, and yet their presence was unmistakably human. There was a discipline in their stance that demanded respect, a quiet strength that spoke of duty and service. Obama approached one of the guards, walking slowly, careful not to disturb the precision of their formation. He had met guards before, of course, in different countries and settings, but there was something uniquely commanding about these sentries, a blend of tradition, pride, and restraint. The guard, noticing the former president, gave a brief, formal acknowledgement, a slight nod that conveyed recognition without breaking protocol. Obama responded with a warm smile, appreciating the unspoken communication. There was a shared understanding in that brief exchange, a recognition of service and dedication that transcended titles and ranks. He had met many people in power, but there was something grounding about these guards, something that reminded him that leadership and service came in many forms, not all of them in the spotlight. As the tour continued, Obama was guided through rooms filled with historical artifacts, exquisite furniture, and priceless works of art. Each room seemed to have its own story, its own personality. The guide spoke with quiet reverence, explaining the significance of each item, each painting, each decorative element. Obama listened intently, asking questions not just out of curiosity but out of genuine interest. He wanted to understand the context, the lives behind the objects, and the legacy they represented. It was more than a tour. It was a lesson in history, tradition, and the subtle power of continuity. In one particular hall, the ceiling was painted with scenes of historical events, capturing moments of triumph, struggle, and unity. Obama paused, looking up, taking in the intricate details. He felt a strange connection, realizing that leadership, regardless of the nation, carried universal challenges and responsibilities. The portraits of monarchs and statesmen were not just representations of power. They were reminders of accountability, duty, and the lasting impact of decisions. He thought about his own time in office, the challenges he had faced, and the lessons he had learned. In this moment, history seemed to converse with him, bridging the past and the present in a silent dialogue. Throughout the visit, Obama's demeanor remained composed, but there was a quiet energy in his eyes, a curiosity that had not dimmed with years of public life. He observed not just the grandeur but also the human element, the subtle gestures of staff, the disciplined yet human presence of the guards, the care with which every detail had been curated. He recognized that behind every polished surface and elegant arrangement was effort, dedication, and a deep respect for tradition. And in that recognition, he felt both admiration and inspiration. As the morning light streamed through the tall windows, casting patterns on the polished floors, Obama felt a sense of calm reflection. He was a leader who had faced immense pressure and responsibility, yet in this space, he found a moment of pause. The palace, with its history and grandeur, had a way of slowing time, of allowing one to step outside the immediate demands of the world and simply be present. He appreciated the stillness, the elegance, and the quiet dignity that filled the rooms. It was a reminder that even amidst the complexities of leadership, there was value in observation, reflection, and respect for the continuum of history. By the time he reached the central hall, where the guards formed a precise line along the walls, Obama felt a mix of anticipation and curiosity. He had seen the guards from a distance, admired their discipline, but now, standing closer, he was struck by their quiet presence. They were not just symbols. They were people who had chosen a life of service, who embodied duty in its purest form. He wondered about their thoughts, their experiences, and the stories they carried silently behind the stoic expressions. There was a human story here, one that perhaps few outside these walls ever saw, and Obama, as a student of history and human nature, felt a keen interest in learning more. As the tour continued, he sensed that something unexpected was about to happen, though he could not yet name it. The palace, with all its elegance and tradition, had a way of creating moments that were both formal and deeply personal. Obama's heart carried a quiet anticipation, a readiness to experience something that might leave a lasting impression. Little did he know that the interaction with the royal guard was about to become a defining moment of the visit, one that would touch him in ways words often fail to capture. As Barack Obama moved deeper into the palace, the sense of history and tradition around him seemed to grow. Heavier, Every step he took echoed softly against the polished floors, a quiet reminder that he was walking through centuries of carefully preserved history. The halls were quiet, but the quiet was not empty. It was filled with stories. The portraits on the walls seemed almost alive, their painted eyes following him as he passed, and each room whispered tales of leadership, courage, and the challenges of duty. The former president had been in many grand places before, but Buckingham Palace had a different kind of energy. It was formal, yes, but it also carried a strange intimacy, a sense that every detail had been crafted with care and purpose. As he approached one of the palace corridors, the royal guards became more visible. They stood at attention, rigid yet composed, their tall bearskin hats adding to the sense of formality. Obama had seen ceremonial guards in other countries, but there was something uniquely commanding about these sentinels. Their presence was not just about tradition. It was about commitment, discipline, and honor. Each guard appeared almost motionless, yet there was a quiet strength in their posture. Their eyes, fixed forward, held a sense of calm vigilance that spoke of years of training and personal dedication. Obama found himself drawn to one guard in particular. This guard stood near an ornate doorway, his posture impeccable, his expression unreadable. There was a human quality to the way he carried himself, despite the formal attire and the rigid stance. Obama's curiosity was piqued. He approached slowly, careful not to break the guard's focus, but also eager to experience this encounter beyond mere observation. He understood the importance of respect, especially in places where protocol was sacred, but he also sensed that there might be an opportunity for a personal connection, even in such a formal setting. "Good morning," Obama said softly, offering a warm, genuine smile. The guard acknowledged him with a slight nod, still maintaining his posture, his eyes forward. There was no immediate response beyond the nod, yet something in that brief gesture felt significant. It was the kind of acknowledgement that carried weight without words, a silent recognition of status, respect, and shared understanding. Obama noticed the small details, the way the guard's gloves were perfectly aligned, the subtle shift of weight to maintain balance, the quiet precision in every movement. It was a reminder that discipline and commitment often speak louder than words. Then something unexpected happened. The guard, after a brief moment, spoke in a quiet but steady voice. "It is not often we receive visitors who understand the weight of responsibility," he said. His words were simple, but they carried a depth that surprised Obama. It was not flattery, it was an observation, a reflection on leadership and duty. The guard's voice was calm, measured, but there was an authenticity to it that made Obama pause. He looked at the man, seeing beyond the uniform and the formal role, recognizing a human perspective shaped by service and experience. Obama responded thoughtfully. "You understand more than you might realize," he said, meeting the guard's steady gaze. "Every role that requires service, discipline, and responsibility carries its own challenges, whether it's leading a nation or guarding its history." The guard nodded subtly, as if acknowledging not just the words, but the shared understanding. There was a quiet connection forming, one that transcended titles, uniforms, and protocol. Obama felt a rare moment of ease, a sense that here, in this precise and controlled environment, he could speak freely, and that his words would be met with understanding rather than judgment. The palace, which had seemed formal and distant moments before, suddenly felt more human. As the conversation continued, the guard shared a story from his own life, a simple anecdote about training, dedication, and the quiet sacrifices made in service to others. He spoke of long hours standing in the cold, of maintaining focus despite fatigue, and of the small moments that reminded him why he had chosen this path. Obama listened intently, captivated not just by the story itself, but by the sincerity behind it. The guard spoke without ego or pretense, simply sharing the truth of his experience. "I have seen leaders come and go," the guard said quietly, "but the ones who make the greatest impact are often those who understand the people behind the titles." It's easy to forget that leadership is not just about power, it's about service, understanding, and compassion. Obama's expression softened. He had spent years making decisions that affected millions of people, decisions that weighed heavily on his conscience. Hearing these words, coming from someone who had dedicated his life to duty in a completely different context, struck a chord deep within him. It was a reminder that leadership and service, regardless of scale, shared universal truths. The guard's perspective was simple yet profound, and it resonated with the lessons Obama had learned through years of public service. For a moment, time seemed to slow. The formalities of the palace faded into the background, replaced by a quiet human connection. Obama felt a wave of emotion, a mixture of gratitude, humility, and reflection. He realized that these moments, unexpected, sincere, and personal, were often more powerful than the grand ceremonies and official events he was used to. Here, in the midst of tradition and discipline, he was reminded of the value of honesty, empathy, and human connection. The guard continued, sharing observations about the nature of responsibility. "It is not the recognition that matters," he said, "but the quiet impact of your actions. Sometimes those who serve the most are never seen, yet their presence is felt everywhere." His words were unassuming, yet they carried a weight that made Obama pause. He reflected on the countless people whose efforts often went unnoticed. The staff, the aides, the countless individuals behind the scenes who ensured that governments, institutions, and traditions functioned smoothly. It was a reminder that leadership was never solitary. It was a shared endeavor built on the contributions of many. Obama nodded slowly, taking in every word. "You're right," he said. "I've always believed that leadership is about empowering others, understanding their needs, and making decisions that honor the people we serve. Too often, the focus is on recognition, but the true measure is the difference we make quietly, without expectation of praise." The guard's eyes remained steady, reflecting a quiet satisfaction. There was no need for further validation. The mutual understanding was enough. In that simple exchange, Obama felt a profound sense of connection, a reminder that even in the most formal and disciplined settings, humanity could shine through. The words of the guard were not just polite conversation. They were insights born from lived experience, reflections that carried both wisdom and humility. As the conversation drew to a close, Obama felt an unexpected emotion rising within him. It was a mixture of respect, admiration, and a gentle humility. He realized that moments like this, though brief, had the power to leave a lasting impression. Leadership, he thought, was not measured solely by titles or accomplishments, but by the capacity to listen, to learn, and to appreciate the perspectives of those around you. This guard, standing silently yet speaking profoundly, had reminded him of that truth in a way that few had before. For a long moment, they stood in silence, acknowledging the shared understanding between them. The palace corridor, once just a passage between rooms, had become a space of quiet reflection. Obama felt the weight of the guard's words, the sincerity behind them, and the rare gift of being seen and understood without formality or expectation. It was a moment that transcended politics, protocol, and ceremony, a reminder of the simple human truths that connect people across time, culture, and circumstance. Finally, Obama spoke, his voice soft but steady. "I've never heard anything like this before," he said, a faint smile playing across his face. "Thank you for sharing your perspective. It's a lesson I will carry with me." The guard gave a subtle nod, returning to his position with unwavering composure. Yet even as he resumed his duty, the impact of the conversation lingered. Obama watched for a moment, appreciating the quiet strength of the man before him. He realized that sometimes the most profound lessons came from unexpected places, from people who were not in the spotlight but who carried wisdom forged through discipline, service, and experience. As he continued his tour through Buckingham Palace, Obama felt a renewed sense of reflection and gratitude. The guard's words had shifted something within him, reminding him of the human dimension behind every formal encounter. Leadership was not just about decisions, speeches, or ceremonies. It was about understanding, empathy, and the connections that give meaning to service. In the quiet moments of observation and conversation, he had encountered a truth that resonated deeply, one that would remain with him long after the visit was over. Walking further along the polished floors, Obama noticed other guards, each standing with the same discipline and dignity. He observed them with renewed attention, seeing not just the uniform or the role, but the individual behind it, the dedication, the effort, and the quiet pride that defined their service. The palace, with all its grandeur, had provided a stage for a simple yet profound human connection, a reminder that even amidst ceremony and tradition, Authentic interactions could leave lasting impressions. By the time Obama left the corridor, he felt a mixture of awe and humility. The palace had offered more than a visual spectacle. It had provided a moment of genuine insight, a lesson in humanity and service that was both rare and deeply moving. The words of the guard echoed in his mind, a quiet reminder that leadership at its core was about understanding others, appreciating their contributions, and recognizing the shared responsibility that binds people together. As he continued through the palace, Obama knew that this encounter would stay with him, not as a ceremonial memory, but as a meaningful experience that had touched his heart. The guard, standing steadfast in his duty, had offered something far greater than mere words. He had offered perspective, wisdom, and a reminder that even the smallest gestures of sincerity could resonate profoundly, leaving an impact that transcended time, status, and expectation. As Barack Obama continued walking through the vast halls of Buckingham Palace, the encounter with the royal guard lingered in his mind. Normally, he had been trained to maintain composure, to smile politely, and to move gracefully through public events without letting his emotions show. Years in the highest office had required a kind of emotional armor. Yet now he felt a shift within himself, a subtle stirring that he could not ignore. The guard's words, simple yet profound, had reached him in a way that official greetings, formal speeches, and ceremonial routines never could. They had touched a part of him that had been rarely exposed in public. He paused for a moment in a sunlit corridor, where the morning light streamed through the tall windows, casting long patterns on the polished floor. The corridors were lined with portraits of past monarchs, each gazing solemnly from their gilded frames. He looked at them and thought about the nature of leadership. These were figures who had ruled nations in times of turmoil and peace, whose decisions had shaped the lives of millions. He understood that his own decisions, though different in scope, had similarly impacted countless people. And yet here in this palace, the focus was not on power or legacy, but on quiet service, discipline, and humanity. The contrast was striking. Obama's mind drifted back to the guard's story, to the quiet sacrifices made each day by those who served diligently without expectation of recognition. He thought about the hours spent standing in cold weather, the physical strain, the need for unwavering focus, and the deep commitment to duty. It reminded him of the countless aides, staff members, and ordinary citizens he had met during his presidency, people whose efforts were often unnoticed, but whose impact was profound. The realization brought a sense of humility, a gentle acknowledgement that leadership was not solely about titles or ceremonies, but about understanding and honoring those around you. As he walked further, Obama felt a rare heaviness in his chest, a mix of reflection and emotion that he rarely allowed himself to experience publicly. Normally, he had to be composed, analytical, and strategic, but in this moment, he simply allowed himself to feel. He realized that even the most disciplined leaders needed moments of quiet reflection, moments to connect with the human experiences that made service meaningful. The palace, with its serene elegance and sense of history, provided the perfect backdrop for such introspection. He entered a grand hall where sunlight bounced off crystal chandeliers, scattering light across the marble floor. The grandeur of the room was almost overwhelming, yet it did not distract him from the thoughts swirling in his mind. Instead, it seemed to amplify them, highlighting the contrast between ceremonial display and the quiet, sincere acts of service that often went unseen. He thought about the guard, standing silently yet speaking with authenticity, and he felt a deep sense of gratitude. It was rare to encounter someone whose perspective, so simple and direct, could touch the heart of a former president with decades of experience. Obama leaned slightly against a polished railing, gazing at the intricate designs on the ceiling above. The painted scenes depicted historical events, battles, celebrations, and moments of unity. Each brushstroke seemed purposeful, deliberate, and full of meaning. He reflected on the ways history was recorded and remembered, not just through grand acts, but also through the countless small, meaningful actions that shaped societies over time. The guard's words had reminded him that true leadership and service were often quiet, unassuming, and deeply human. It was a lesson he realized he needed now more than ever. He could feel his heart swelling with a mixture of admiration and introspection. Normally, he would compose himself, mask his feelings behind a polite smile, and move forward with the ceremonial tour. But in that moment, he felt the weight of emotion rise, a profound awareness of the human side of service and dedication. He thought about the countless stories of people who had dedicated themselves to a cause greater than themselves, often without recognition. The guard's words had become a mirror, reflecting both the humility and responsibility that came with leadership. Obama took a slow breath and closed his eyes briefly, allowing himself to experience the emotions fully. There was no audience here, no cameras, no need for performance, just the quiet truth of the moment. He felt the intensity of the experience, the rare opportunity to connect with someone whose perspective was grounded in dedication rather than ceremony. He realized that moments like this were gifts, reminders that leadership and service were not just about decisions or recognition, but about empathy, understanding, and the unseen impact of one's actions. Opening his eyes, he continued walking, yet each step felt different. The corridors, once a simple pathway through the palace, now seemed imbued with meaning. Every polished surface, every portrait, every detail of craftsmanship reminded him that human effort, discipline, and care were what made institutions like this endure. And it was not just the grandeur that left an impression, but the people, the guards, the staff, and those who committed themselves quietly to their roles. Their service, though often unnoticed, was what made the palace more than just a building. It was a living testament to dedication and integrity. As he approached another section of the palace, Obama noticed more guards stationed along the walls, their posture rigid, their expressions calm yet alert. He observed them carefully, appreciating the discipline required to maintain such focus for hours on end. He thought about the sacrifices they made, the long periods of standing without complaint, and the unwavering attention to duty. He realized that leadership was not only about making decisions from the top, but also about respecting the dedication and discipline of those who served alongside or beneath you. The guards were embodiments of these principles, and their presence offered a subtle but powerful lesson. A quiet, almost imperceptible smile appeared on Obama's face as he remembered the exact words the guard had spoken earlier. Leadership is not just about power, it's about service, understanding, and compassion. Those words echoed in his mind, each repetition deepening their impact. He felt a lump form in his throat, a rare moment of vulnerability. It was unusual for him to feel so moved in a public or formal context. Yet here, in the grandeur and quiet of the palace, he allowed himself to experience it fully. The recognition that even a single sincere perspective could touch his heart was humbling. As he paused near a large window, looking out over the palace gardens, Obama reflected on the broader meaning of the encounter. Leadership, he thought, was not just about public recognition or historical records. It was about understanding, appreciating, and connecting with the people whose efforts made society function smoothly. It was about the quiet courage of those who served faithfully without expecting accolades. The guard had reminded him of these truths in a way that no speech or book ever had. In that moment, he felt gratitude not only for the guard's words, but for the reminder that even small acts of honesty and sincerity could have a profound impact. The former president's mind wandered to his own experiences, moments during his presidency when he had been humbled by the courage, commitment, and sacrifices of ordinary people. From the volunteers and teachers to the staff and military personnel, countless individuals had shaped the world around him in ways that were often unseen. The guard's words had crystallized this realization, turning it into a tangible, emotional experience. Obama felt the weight of history, human effort, and personal connection converge, leaving him with a deep sense of respect and reflection. He continued walking through the halls, yet the palace seemed transformed in his eyes. Each corridor, room, and portrait was no longer just an architectural feature or decorative element. They were symbols of human endeavor, of dedication, and of service. The grandeur of the palace, while impressive, had taken on a new significance. It was a testament not only to the history of monarchs, but also to the countless people whose work, discipline, and commitment had preserved it. Obama's thoughts were absorbed in this understanding, and he felt a profound connection to the stories embedded in the walls around him. Reaching a quieter section of the palace, Obama paused again, taking a long moment to gather his thoughts. He felt a surge of gratitude for the guard, for the unexpected honesty and insight that had touched him so deeply. He realized that leadership was not measured solely by accomplishments or recognition, but by the ability to see, understand, and honor the efforts of others. The guard's words had crystallized a truth that was often overlooked in public life. The quiet, selfless dedication of those who serve with integrity is the true backbone of any society or institution. For several moments, Obama simply stood, absorbing the emotions that flowed through him. It was a mixture of awe, humility, gratitude, and reflection, a combination rarely experienced in the midst of public life. He felt the power of human connection, of honesty, and of understanding, and he knew that this moment would remain with him long after he left the palace. The encounter had transformed a formal visit into a personal journey, a reminder that even in the grandest settings, the simplest truths could resonate most deeply. Finally, Obama continued walking, each step now carrying a sense of purpose and contemplation. He understood that the experience with the guard had offered him a rare gift, a moment of clarity about the essence of service, leadership, and humanity. The palace, with all its beauty and tradition, had become more than a ceremonial venue. It had become a place of personal insight, reflection, and emotional resonance. He felt renewed in his appreciation for the people whose quiet dedication often went unnoticed, and he carried with him the knowledge that true leadership is inseparable from empathy, respect, and human connection. As Barack Obama continued moving through Buckingham Palace, the memory of the royal guard's words remained with him like a quiet echo, gently shaping his thoughts and feelings. It was a rare gift in his life, an experience that combined formality, history, and deep human connection. The palace corridors, with their grand chandeliers and polished floors, seemed to hold him in a reflective embrace. Every step he took felt meaningful, as though the palace itself had slowed time to allow him to absorb the impact of the encounter. For a moment, the pressures and demands of public life, the constant scrutiny, the responsibility, the expectation, felt distant. He paused in a spacious hall with high ceilings and enormous windows that overlooked the lush palace gardens. Sunlight poured in, illuminating the intricate details of the room. Gilded moldings, paintings of past monarchs, and delicate tapestries that told centuries-old stories. The grandeur of the setting was undeniable, yet Obama's attention was drawn inward. He reflected on the lessons from the guard, the simplicity of the words, and the power they had to evoke such emotion. It was extraordinary how a brief exchange with someone standing silently in service could inspire such profound introspection. Obama's thoughts wandered to the nature of service and responsibility. Leadership, he realized, was more than policy decisions or public speeches. It was about empathy, about understanding the people whose lives were affected by one's choices. It was about recognizing those whose contributions often went unnoticed, whose diligence and care formed the foundation for everything else. The guard's words had crystallized this understanding in a way that was personal, immediate, and unforgettable. They reminded him that service, whether in a palace, a government, or a community, had the power to influence lives quietly but deeply. As he walked through another corridor, he noticed more guards stationed at intervals along the hall. Their posture was impeccable, their expressions unreadable, and yet Obama could sense the discipline, pride, and humanity behind their stoic faces. Each one was committed to their role, and each carried the weight of responsibility with quiet dignity. Observing them, he thought about the countless men and women who served without recognition in other parts of the world. Teachers, medical staff, soldiers, volunteers, and leaders who worked tirelessly for the benefit of others. Leadership, he realized, was not confined to titles or positions. It was a shared endeavor, shaped by countless acts of dedication and care. Obama paused again, taking in the grandeur of the palace while simultaneously connecting with the humanity surrounding him. He thought about how the palace, with all its history, tradition, and ceremonial precision, was more than a monument. It was a living representation of human effort, of continuity, and of dedication across generations. The guards, staff, and caretakers all played a vital role in preserving this legacy. The encounter with the royal guard had reminded him of the importance of seeing the people behind the institutions, of appreciating their efforts, and of valuing the quiet ways in which they contributed to something larger than themselves. As he continued his tour, Obama felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the guard, but for the opportunity to witness this form of service firsthand. He thought about the ways in which leadership could be enriched by humility and observation. The palace, with its formal protocols and elaborate ceremonies, had unexpectedly offered him a lesson in simplicity. Sometimes, the most profound insights come from honest, unguarded moments. The guard had provided one of those moments, and Obama realized it was rare to encounter someone whose words could resonate so deeply and so immediately. Walking into a smaller, more intimate room, Obama paused to study a collection of historical artifacts. He noticed that each piece had been meticulously preserved, reflecting not only the history of the monarchy, but also the dedication of countless individuals who had cared for them over the years. He thought about the parallels between the palace staff and the guard he had met. Both committed to preserving tradition, both exercising patience and care, both contributing quietly to something much larger than themselves. It was a reminder that service took many forms, and that every act of dedication had value, even if it went unnoticed by the public eye. He moved to a window overlooking the palace grounds and took a deep breath. The gardens stretched out in orderly rows, carefully manicured, each plant and pathway maintained with precision. The scene was a perfect example of patience, discipline, and dedication, the same qualities he had admired in the guard. Obama reflected on his own life and career, thinking about the countless individuals whose efforts had supported his work. Advisors, staff, and ordinary citizens who had contributed to the larger cause of service. Leadership, he realized, was inseparable from this network of dedication, and every thoughtful action, however small, had an impact on the bigger picture. In that moment, a wave of emotion rose within him. He felt a rare vulnerability, a quiet acknowledgement of the human connections that defined his life and work. The guard's words had opened a door to reflection, allowing him to feel deeply about service, dedication, and the ways in which human effort shapes history. Obama knew that this experience would stay with him far longer than any ceremonial visit, photo opportunity, or public speech. It had become personal, meaningful, and transformative. He thought again about the guard's perspective. Leadership is not just about power, it's about service, understanding, and compassion. Those words, simple yet profound, had struck a chord. They reminded him that every person's role, no matter how seemingly small, could have immense value. They reminded him that empathy and humility were essential components of true leadership. He reflected on how easily people could overlook these lessons in the rush of life, politics, and ceremony, and he felt grateful for the gentle reminder that the guard had provided. As Obama walked further into the palace, he encountered other guests and staff, but his mind remained with the encounter. He observed their interactions, noting the professionalism, patience, and subtle kindness in their behavior. The palace, he realized, was a place where formality and humanity coexisted. Every detail, from the polished floors to the attentive staff, reflected a commitment to excellence and respect. Yet it was the human moments, the conversations, gestures, and quiet words that truly resonated. The guard had shown him that it was these moments, rather than grandeur or ceremony, that left a lasting impression. He moved toward a small sitting room and took a quiet seat, allowing himself time to process the experience. Obama's thoughts wandered through the years of his life in public service, revisiting moments when he had witnessed similar humility and dedication in others. He thought about teachers inspiring students, medical staff saving lives, community leaders uplifting neighborhoods, and ordinary citizens making sacrifices for the greater good. The guard's words had reminded him that leadership was inseparable from recognition of these efforts, and that true influence was measured not by accolades, but by the positive impact on the lives of others. As he sat, Obama felt a deep sense of calm reflection. The palace had offered him more than a ceremonial visit. It had offered a space to connect with history, tradition, and the human stories behind them. The encounter with the guard had been unexpected, yet profoundly moving. It was a reminder that every person, regardless of rank or title, had the power to influence others through honesty, insight, and sincere expression. Obama realized that these quiet exchanges often carried more meaning than formal speeches or public accolades, leaving a lasting impact on both speaker and listener. He remembered the look in the guard's eyes, the steady calm, and the sincerity behind every word. It was not a performance, it was authenticity, and it was that authenticity that had touched him so deeply. Obama reflected on the many times in life when authenticity was rare, when words were spoken for effect rather than truth. Here, in the grandeur of Buckingham Palace, he had encountered a truth that transcended ceremony, politics, and protocol. It was a human truth, timeless and universally understood. Obama rose from his seat and continued walking, feeling the lingering warmth of gratitude and reflection. Every step through the palace now felt purposeful, imbued with an awareness of the countless human stories embedded within its walls. He thought about how this lesson could influence his own life and work, how it could deepen his appreciation for the people who serve quietly and faithfully every day. He understood that leadership was not solitary. It was a network of dedication, empathy, and human connection. The guard had reminded him of this truth in a way that was unforgettable. As he approached the final section of the tour, Obama glanced once more at the royal guards standing at attention. He felt a renewed respect for their discipline, dedication, and humanity. Their role, though largely symbolic to outsiders, represented values that transcended the palace walls: commitment, service, patience, and integrity. He reflected on the fact that these values were universal, present in countless individuals around the world, in different forms and contexts. The guard's words had illuminated the profound influence of such values, leaving Obama with a sense of admiration and inspiration. By the time the tour concluded, Obama felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The visit had offered more than a glimpse into royal tradition. It had provided a rare, intimate lesson in human connection, humility, and the enduring value of service. He walked toward the palace exit with a lightness of spirit, carrying with him not only memories of grandeur and history, but also the quiet wisdom imparted by the guard. The experience had touched him deeply, reminding him that even the most disciplined and ceremonial spaces could hold moments of genuine human insight. Stepping outside, Obama paused to take in the gardens one last time. The sun cast warm light over the neatly trimmed hedges, flower beds, and pathways. The beauty of the scene mirrored the lessons he had learned inside, that care, attention, and dedication, whether to a garden, a palace, or a life of service, yield results that endure and inspire. He smiled, thinking of the guard and the unexpected connection they had shared. The words, the story, and the sincerity had left an impression far greater than any speech, handshake, or photograph ever could. Finally, as he prepared to leave Buckingham Palace, Obama felt a quiet sense of gratitude. The encounter with the guard had transformed a formal visit into a personal journey of reflection, emotion, and insight. He knew that the lesson would stay with him, that true leadership is about empathy, service, and recognition of the unseen contributions of others. The palace, with all its history and elegance, had provided the setting, but it was the human interaction that had left a lasting mark on his heart.